Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Zen Blonde podcast. It's your girl, Lauren, and today I'm joined by a very special guest. Her name is Amanda Matta, and she has become the official royal commentator of TikTok. She has an account called Matta of Fact, which is your one-stop shop for literally anything about the royal family. I learned so much just from listening to her TikToks, looking at her account. She truly is just such a wealth of knowledge, and she has a sick tiara collection. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, I've been dying to chat with you for so long because when I started out on TikTok, the royal family was one of my favorite things to talk about. And I do royal things here and there, but I just love following along your channel because you really own that niche. What started your fascination with the royal family?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of just been this ever-present niche in my life. My mom was a big Princess Diana stan back in the day. I've talked about this before. She gave me a book of Princess Diana paper dolls, which I absolutely destroyed. But that's, how deep her obsession with the royals went. And it kind of just carried over into my life because when I was coming of age, it was all about Prince William and Kate Middleton getting married. So it was just this natural progression of kind of having the background knowledge through my mom, and then it became relevant to all of our lives as millennials too. So just this very weird working knowledge that I've acquired since then.
I think it's amazing, and you really are almost just like a royal historian in the way that you break things down. I really admire the info that you give. And it's interesting because you and I are obviously both American, but I don't know if you've received this feedback. When I speak about the royal family on TikTok, I tend to get a lot of people from the UK that are upset that I, as an American, am talking about the royal family. But very similar to you, I think one of my earliest memories was Princess Diana passing away. I was 5 years old, and my grandmother's Irish, so I have that tie to that part of the world. And so there was just always kind of a knowledge of the royal family in my house. And Diana was just such an icon that I'm wearing her sweater today just for you, her sheep sweater.
Yes, I love it.
It's the best. So you just covered William and Kate's royal tour to the Caribbean, which was essentially just a slow moving train wreck. Can you just tell the people some of your thoughts? Because you had so many thoughts, not to quote Elizabeth Holmes.
So many thoughts. Right. Yes. I do always make it clear, I'm not a professional royal commentator. I'm not a quote unquote official historian of the royals, but everything is kind of based on my own opinions as an outsider, as an American, because the royals do make an effort to be known globally and to be relevant to people all over the world. So yeah, the trip to the Caribbean was supposed to be celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee and shoring up support in this part of the world after Barbados removed the Queen as head of state. And that is not what happened. Like you said, it was just this slow motion train wreck where we saw William and Kate being met with protests just right off of their plane. Everywhere they went, there was this kind of specter following them where the enthusiasm was still there to see the royals, but it probably wasn't what they expected, because there were these conversations happening about their colonial past, the uncertain future of the Commonwealth. It was just very, very interesting to watch unfold in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you really did a good job of pointing out the fact that when the royals go on these tours, it's an opportunity for them to shine a light on the local people. And even with the clothing Kate wore, you did a great job of breaking that down because, you said that she obviously wasn't necessarily shining a light on, designers from the Caribbean. But then you went into, how her stylist is on maternity leave and they probably planned these outfits far in advance. But it almost just created this really bad look, it seems, because it was drawing upon their colonial past by, wearing looks that were very similar to Queen Elizabeth during the time where, things were really, really entwined between England and Jamaica. I think specifically was one of them. And then there was, of course, the awful photo of Kate Middleton reaching for those children through the chain link fence, which was, again, just, it was truly such a slow moving train wreck. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and it's tricky because I do, in a way, pity Will and Kate because they were trying to do double duty. It's this balancing act between they're there to represent the Queen and everything that she stands for and represents, but also they're there, like you said, to shine a light on these countries they were visiting: Belize, Jamaica, the Bahamas. So for them, finding that middle ground, it's a daunting task that, like, I don't think anybody really could have anticipated until right before they stepped off that plane going the way that it did. But yeah, things like the chain link fence photo, I don't think anybody in any other situation would have looked at that in the same light, because these conversations about colonialism, about the racial tensions in this area were happening for the first time ever, with royals being present on the ground. So, it's an unfortunate chain of events where the optics were just really, really bad, regardless of their intentions. That's what people were seeing, was this disconnect. So yeah, really unfortunate.
Slow moving train wreck. And I love the way that you pointed out like a good example of Kate's dressing when she wore the more subdued kind of like sage green dress and allowed the people around her to shine a little bit more. I feel like I learn something new every time I watch your channel, and it put things in perspective for me as to, because they can't speak, obviously, their mind all the time, but they speak with their clothing a lot, and so right. I think finding the hidden meanings in their clothing is really, really interesting. I love also the yellow dress thing was hilarious, Amanda.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, her departure dress. Not what I would have chosen, but it was definitely a visual reminder that she's walking in the footsteps of Queen Elizabeth, of Princess Diana. Will and Kate, wherever they go, they are going to be promoting tourism. That's another part of royal tours, is kind of shining a light on these places as a destination. Whenever Kate wears a dress, she is, whether she wants to or not, promoting that designer. Everything she wears, if you can identify it, it sells out in minutes. And that happened, on the royal tour. And that, I think, is what made it such a pity that she exclusively stuck to European designers. She had a real chance to bring attention to, there are many Caribbean designers, British, Jamaican designers that she could have worked with. And for whatever reason, she wasn't able to, or she chose not to. So again, just another nail in the coffin on this royal tour.
Truly, truly just such a mess. Now, another question I have for you. I don't know when we're getting The Crown again, but are you a fan of The Crown? You must watch The Crown.
Yes, I have watched The Crown. It's coming back, I think, late this year. I've heard November, I believe. So still a little bit to wait. But
stop changing up on me.
I know. But they're doing it really well, I think. So I do love that show as a kind of historical drama. My pet peeve is when people take it as fact, because it very clearly is dramatized for Netflix, right, to tell a good story. And some of the things in there are pretty much straight out of the history books, if you want to say that, because a lot of these people are still alive. But some of them have been either embellished or made up entirely to make for good TV. So yeah, psychologically, it's a great way to kind of get inside the heads and the private moments of some of these royals. But, if you're interested in something in The Crown, I would encourage everyone to Google it and just see what actually happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those situations where people might not have the background information, like that this is not verbatim what happened in terms of like a discussion between Camilla and Diana or Charles and Diana, and people get angry at people who are still alive for fights that maybe didn't actually happen. So that's definitely a dangerous territory to play in. I love the show so much. I love how well they get the clothing down, and I think it does give you an essence of what it would be like to be a part of the firm, but definitely just broad strokes, not little details of the truth. Another one that came out recently that I didn't like, and I wonder how you felt about this, I really did not like the Spencer movie. I'm sorry to say. It was too much for me. It was too much.
Yeah, I had mixed feelings. Yes, I had mixed feelings on Spencer. I think Kristen Stewart did a great job of nailing Diana and nailing her mannerisms. from what I've heard, people who knew Diana said that her depiction was spot on. She got the character. But what Spencer did was kind of invent her mental state at that time, taking, again, like you said, the broad swaths of what we know about the events that happened and extrapolating on them, making, telling a good story once again. And it's different from The Crown in that it kind of held a magnifying glass to Diana's state of mind in a really disturbing way. If you haven't seen it, I suggest having a strong like to see. It's kind of hard to watch in places, but it makes you think about, you know, what she might have been going through. But I don't think we can take that as this is definitely what happened.
No, absolutely not. And I think for me, it was like there was something about it that was like Requiem for a Dream, but then it was like this like crazy fever dream like movie that like made me feel really, really, really like uncomfortable and nauseous and just terrible because there was like self-harm and there was like eating disordered stuff, and then there was just a lot of chaos and really like it made you feel trapped. And I think the point of the movie was to maybe get an inkling into like how maybe Diana felt. Like, who knows, right? Because she's not alive to tell us. But it just by the end of the movie, my stomach was just like, ugh. Like I felt queasy from it. Actually, it was just like really like some parts of it felt disturbing to me, and it was just a really interesting interpretation. But I'm a big fan of like I will watch literally like the worst like William and Kate Lifetime movie of their wedding. Like the Meghan and Harry, I've seen all of them. So, you know, I just appreciate when people make content for me to consume regarding the family.
Oh, totally. And, you know, visually, they're usually done very well. Sticking to the fashion choices is always a good way to kind of build the royal world out and give people something else to relate to it with. So, yeah, I don't think there's any harm in consuming that kind of media, but always take it with a grain of salt and remember that it's an interpretation. And it's, like you said, sometimes it's meant to make you feel a certain way about the players in these stories. In Diana's case, to make you kind of feel sorry for her. In Charles' case, maybe to humanize him or to make you feel like he's the villain, depending on what you're watching. So, yeah, always interesting to see what you can do with these real life stories.
No, absolutely. And, you know, they're just so under the magnifying glass, and they'll always make for amazing engagement because the world is interested. And I mean, one of the main people who's really gotten a lot of attention in the past few years is obviously Meghan. And I love your coverage of what goes on with Meghan, because I think what's become apparent to me, especially in the age of Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein and everything that's gone on there with Virginia Giuffre, Meghan, it seems, may have been used as a shield to protect Andrew from bad media. And it feels like, you know, anytime something goes awry, it's like, how can they blame it on Meghan, or how can they use Meghan as like a shield to protect somebody within the hierarchy? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh, so many thoughts. I'm writing like a several part essay on this for my Patreon. It could easily be a book, but you know, royal women for centuries have been used as scapegoats, as a method of distracting from the true like centralized power and the true controversies within the royal family. So like the Fergie and Diana controversy, like the rivalry that was invented in the press, it's just being repeated here with Kate and Meghan once again. And of course, Meghan is victim of like a much more insidious kind of scapegoating, which is racially charged. It's misogynistic. It's truly just disgusting. But it does make you question whether what you mentioned, the what they call the invisible contract, whether that's at play here, where some minor member of the royal family, air quotes minor, is offered up to protect a more senior member, distract from something that would make them look worse. It's a shame that that's how that situation unfolded. And it's also that it gave rise to, in the royal watching space, these two factions where it's really hard in the royal family and be neutral. you almost have to take sides. And I try not to as much as I can. I try to stay objective, but you're almost forced to pick a side, to either be a Sussex supporter or a Cambridge stan. There's almost no room to have a middle ground.
Yeah, it seems very, it's like a very divisive situation. And, you know, I think even in the Oprah interview, Meghan was like, you don't need to like not like her if you like me. And I think it's interesting how that people really do draw a line in the sand. And like, there's people that are like, you know, Team Sussex, Team Cambridge. And, you know, I'm kind of just like pretty neutral on that, although I definitely feel like I could probably relate more to Meghan than any of them. Because
yeah, it's
just
tough.
You know, and even like Kate Middleton, I feel like they, like in the media, she was described as this like commoner. And it just like cracks me up because like she really does come from like a wild amount of privilege to be considered like a commoner, and even like some, I think, blue blood in her background. So it's just the way things are like played out is absolutely crazy. I did like I went crazy over the Oprah interview, and I actually didn't like realize all the guidelines of TikTok Live, and I like went on live while it was happening and was doing commentary, and I've never had that many people on my live. I think I had 10,000 people on my live at once. It was insane. It was insane. But the world was crazy over that Oprah interview. I mean, did you have any like thoughts on that, and that them speaking up and like speaking out for themselves?
Yeah, well, the Oprah interview is when I started making TikToks. It was probably the day after. I filmed my first video, posted it, and it got 3 million views out of the blue. I had so many thoughts. That's why I turned to TikTok, to not annoy the people in my daily life anymore. But yeah, my initial thoughts were, you know, how many parallels you could draw between Diana's experience in suicidal ideation, in struggling with mental health, and how they were just amplified for Meghan with some of the issues of racism that she was bringing up. So absolutely appalling to hear that firsthand. And then in the coming weeks, appalling to see it play out in the way it did, where, you know, Piers Morgan came out and said there were 17 lies in that interview. And that's a line that gets parroted today by people who have made it their sole mission to destroy Meghan Markle. It's, again, like you said, it's crazy to watch it play out.
Yeah, and I feel like you, as a commentator, like have felt some of the heat from the fandom, and like my favorite is like the woman from Wales who said like, that Amanda is all that, thinks she's all that in a bag of chips, and it just literally
puts a crown on a head.
Oh my God, puts a crown on a head and thinks she's all that in a bag of chips. I mean, that was wild. And now you have merch that says all that in a bag of chips on it. I mean, I live for it. Like, what's it been like for you dealing with some of the people that are the opposition to Meghan and have like kind of trickled into your social media to like leave you little notes and whatnot?
Yeah, it's as soon as you go on a public forum and make any statement in support, or not even in support, but pointing out the reality when it comes to Meghan Markle. So saying things like, well, you know, some of the things that are claimed to be lies that she said aren't actually lies, and here's why. You get met with so much vitriol, just disgusting hate. Personal attacks, attacks on your livelihood if they know where you work, trying to get you mass reported and videos taken down. It's truly mind-boggling, but the reality is people dedicate their free time and sometimes all of their time to being, quote, Meghan truthers. Some of the conspiracy theories being that she didn't give birth to her children, that she used a surrogate, that her children are dolls, that they're not real. And all of that, you know, as a person interested in history, I know. But when you look back at history, these are things that have been used in the past. There have been other instances where conspiracy theories have been used to claim that a woman is not worthy of being in the royal family, that she's tainting the bloodline, that her children should not be in the line of succession. So, you know, some of the haters or the trolls or whatever you want to call them, their lines are original, whether they know it or not. They're actually playing into these age-old tropes about the royal family and coming up in defense of it. It's fascinating to watch if you can get over some of the personal attacks that they throw at you, which I didn't know I had a thick skin until I started doing this, but I'm very grateful that I do.
I know, it honestly, like, I was like, wow, like that middle school and all girls Catholic school experience, like, it's like there's this Ovid quote, like, someday this pain will be useful to you. Like, I've never been more humbled and like had a thicker skin than I do now, just because having a massive following on TikTok, like the number of comments and the comments that spill into your Instagram DMs and stuff, it's insane. And when I first started out, it was overwhelming, and now I just really know how to like push it away. But I can't even imagine, because there's so much racism tied up in people's hatred of Meghan, and like classism, and just so many isms that are just awful.
Yeah.
That you're dealing with these really awful people, and it almost sounds like it's like a royal family QAnon. You know?
Yeah, I've called them Aranon in the past, because they really do concoct their own reality and then try and disseminate that to the masses. And sadly, in some spaces, it works. The Daily Mail is notorious for picking up conspiracy theory tweets and turning them into stories. It's really, really disgusting. But yeah, I forget what I was going to say. I had a really good point to make. Oh, yeah, I just, go ahead.
Oh, no. Make your point.
Oh, no, it's, but yeah, if you remember, you know, the kind of people that are saying these things, if you remember that they're not using a real profile most of the time, they're using a burner. They know that what they're saying is not acceptable most of the time, because it's rooted in those racist ideologies that started as soon as Meghan stepped foot in the royal family, when headlines were calling her straight out of Compton and calling her mother a woman from the wrong side of the tracks. So it puts it into perspective when you think of it that way, that this is probably not the majority opinion. It's just the minority opinion being screamed very loudly at you.
Absolutely. And I mean, I just having reported on different people, like with fans, I have the same exact logic as you, which is, you know, you and I are putting our face and names attached to what we're saying, because we believe in what we're saying, and we know that, like, you know, we can show our faces and attach our faces to these words. But a lot of the people you end up encountering online really are just completely anonymous and have no trace of who they are. And in my opinion, I've always felt on some level they must know that what they're doing is wrong. Because if they didn't think that it was wrong, then why not show your face and be public about it and really stand behind it as a human and not be a troll? So it's just crazy.
Or contact you privately. It's always done in a public forum so that other people can pile on and support them. I don't have people, my DMs are open. I don't have people write me DMs trying to explain to me why what I'm saying is so wrong and so controversial. No, it's people trying to intimidate you, you know, in public, so that you question yourself or your credibility gets damaged. So it's, you know, it's a transparent game being played.
Absolutely. And you know, the one thing about you is, like, you always have the receipts. Like, when you go through stuff, like, it is amazing the way that you disseminate information. And I know you have like some education background, but it shines through when you're talking about these things, because like I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm ready for my royal lesson for today. It's honestly absolutely amazing. Another thing I wanted to bring up with you, because I feel like I don't know that much. I know some about it, but I don't know as much as I want to know. And I feel like you know a lot. Okay. So Prince Albert of Monaco and Princess Charlene, like what in God's name is going on there? Because that's really weird. And I'm confused.
Yeah. It's one of those things where unless some major information gets leaked or one of them decides to speak out in the future, I don't think we'll ever have the full story. But Princess Charlene, she's originally from South Africa. There are rumors that she was hand chosen, you know, for an arranged marriage with Prince Albert, who is the sovereign of Monaco. They're a principality, so he's the prince, but he's the head of state. Echoes of Princess Diana and Meghan Markle in her story, where she went to Monaco before the wedding and is rumored to have tried to escape 3 times. Her passport was allegedly taken from her. She allegedly tried to escape during a wedding dress fitting in Paris, and another time by making a dash to the airport, but she was, brought back each of the times. And then on their wedding day, there are pictures of her just crying at the altar outside the church. And it's weird because those pictures do not look like happy tears, but there are other pictures from the day where she is beaming and smiling and looks happy. So from the outside looking in, I think you can ask a lot of questions about that relationship. Prince Albert also has, I think it's 3 children born outside of wedlock before he married Charlene. And, many, many questions can be asked there. They do have 2 kids together. They have twins. And when Charlene was absent almost all of last year for health treatment in South Africa, I think that was the hardest part, was that she was separated from her children. So, she's clearly a loving mother. They clearly co-parent together pretty well because those kids seem well adjusted. But behind closed doors, a lot of people worry about the nature of their relationship and her mental health and what she's going through.
That is wild. That is like some hostage sounding stuff. I mean, I've seen it in the Daily Mail. I read the Daily Mail here and there, but just even hearing like what you're saying about the tweets makes me think that I shouldn't like click on the Snapchat stories.
I read the Daily Mail and then I Google whatever the Daily Mail is saying to see if anybody else is saying it and base my judgment on that.
It's so clickbaity.
Yes.
And it gets me sometimes. Have you ever been featured in the Daily Mail?
Not that I know of. I don't. No, I don't think I have. I don't.
They're like, you're
try
too
not to
on the
Google
other
myself,
side. Like they're like, oh, she's too factual and she's
I
just
make too much
balanced.
sense. Maybe. Yeah, it's bizarre. What was the one I saw the other day? It was a story about how young women are injuring themselves, trying to give themselves faux freckles. And they showed a picture of Meghan Markle because she has freckles. It's not Meghan's fault. She's not making them do this, but they were tying it to her simply because she has freckles. And that's the look that people are trying to emulate. So the vilification is what gets me every time. Even though she's not been seen in public more than a handful of times in the past year, they still have to find a way to bring her into the conversation because she gets them clicks, and that's what it's all about.
Oh my God. Also, like where they live is like truly the most beautiful place in the world. Like if you ever come to California, I will take you on this drive I go on. So my sister lives on the Central Coast, like up, I guess like 3 hours away from me. So our halfway meeting point is like Santa Barbara and Montecito. So we love going there. We do like wine tastings and the beaches are stunningly beautiful. It's like known as the American Riviera. But if you go, we go down to the Montecito Country Mart, we get our Starbucks, and you can't like drive into Meghan and Harry's neighborhood. It's a private neighborhood.
Right.
You can't drive and really see Oprah's house perfectly, but you can see the huge gates and like the 3 different gates, and like the houses back there are just like spectacular. They're like trees that I don't think have existed in any other part of California anywhere else, like for hundreds of years, because they've just been killed everywhere else. It is truly immaculate. And when I first saw it and drove through, I was like, wow, like they really like set up a nice life for themselves and like just escaped like the stuffy situation. And like I think when I grew up, I always thought Buckingham Palace, like wow, it'd be amazing to live in these palaces, but like from what I've read, it seems like they're all kind of like in need of restoration and kind of like musty inside, and like it's just not necessarily super new living quarters, which is understandable, and also they're like so historic, it's hard to keep up with everything. But they set themselves up with the nicest neighborhood ever. Like you would die. You would die.
Yes, I'm sure I would. I would love to come visit. It's funny when their haters say, "Oh, they're off in their Montecito mansion. They're not relevant anymore." It's like, yeah, they picked a beautiful single place to live where the royals have dozens of literally crumbling castles in some cases. Like the Queen, it was recently reported, is not going to live at Buckingham Palace anymore because it's just not comfortable for her. It's drafty, water leaks from the ceiling. It's just hard for upkeep to happen at these places. So I don't blame Meghan and Harry if they knew that that wasn't the lifestyle for them picking such a beautiful place to set up their house. So,
and every time she does an interview from that like one room, I'm like, ooh, like you just know the decorations are good. Meghan has such good taste. And that was another thing that I know you brought up is like there was a lot out there about Kate kind of starting to emulate Meghan's style, and now she's kind of veered back, and I think she's kind of being Kate Middleton again. But that was a really interesting, like, sort of who wore it better moment again. Like people again pitting them against each other. They both looked great in my opinion, but it was kind of funny to see Meghan's style, or Kate's style, transform, and also Kate and William start to hold hands.
Yeah, Kate's image is something that's very interesting to me. When she first entered the royal family, there was this very clear suggestion that they were trying to model her image off of Princess Diana, whose engagement ring she inherited. But, you know, we're 10 years on from that. And, you know, I think you can argue that there is a Kate Middleton style. She does have a vibe of her own. But it is interesting that when Meghan entered the scene, it's like a light bulb appeared over someone's head on her team. And they were like, oh, we've kind of lost sight of, you know, what we could be doing with Kate's image. She could be more modern and more relevant because, you know, a lot of her signature looks were coat dresses, fascinators, things like that, which, although elegant, sophisticated, are a little dated. They're not quite, I think, what the royal family was going for with Kate. They were trying to make her and William very relatable. You know, the PDA thing is interesting too, because Meghan and Harry are notorious for their PDA, holding hands, rubbing each other's arms and their backs when they're in public, which is something that was always said to be against protocol when they did it. And there was also an uptick in Will and Kate's PDA after they were on the scene because people love it. People love to see that. So I think it's smart to take these cues and roll with them and envelop them into her image. But it's also interesting to point out, you know, this is probably where they came from. I don't think it constitutes hating on her to point those things out. It's just good branding. And above all, the royal family is kind of a brand.
Absolutely. I mean, it couldn't be more of a brand. And, it, you know, even just calling it the firm, like, it's just, it's not a normal, or I shouldn't say normal, it's a very different family structure than what most people are used to. But I'm definitely a fan of the royal style. And like, I look into like all the different things they're wearing, even like a lot of Kate's bags and like different things she wears. And like Kate's hair always looks immaculate. Like her hair looks so good. I'm like, how does she get that blowout? But have you ever purchased a royal look or a replica of a royal look?
Yeah, so I do have a couple replica tiaras, which I don't have with me right now. Not exact replicas, but very close dupes, which, believe it or not, are very affordable. And I also have the replica engagement ring, just because that was something which is so emblematic of the royal family these days. Not just, you know, Kate, who wears it now, but also Princess Diana. So as far as effect and things that she's worn, her accessories are very attainable. I think you can buy some of her earrings, her bags, her shoes. Also some of her dresses. She shops at Zara quite often. So that's always interesting to me. It's like, all right, I see what you're doing here. You know, shops on the high street, just like us. She's just a mom on the go, a working woman. So yeah, I have not forayed into the wardrobe per se, but I would also love to get one of the Diana sweaters. Yours is excellent. I also like the one that is pink and the front says, I'm a luxury, and then the back says, few can afford. That's kind of my ultimate wish list item.
Oh, girl, I have that one too.
You really? That's amazing.
I love some of the memorabilia. The only other thing that I've bought, I went to the Diana Museum here. They had like a photography museum. It was amazing. And I got a sweatshirt there, but I also just loved what Meghan wore to her engagement interview. I thought it was the prettiest dress, and I was like, somebody's making a replica of this on Etsy. And I went on, and they literally for like $100 made me this like literal exact replica. And the thing is, it's not like it's this dress that's like so crazy, or somebody would see me wearing it and be like, oh, like that's the dress Meghan wore like to her engagement interview. It's just a really pretty dress, and it was a really pretty green, and I was like, I just like, and it's funny, if you go on to Etsy, people really will like make bespoke versions of their outfits for you, because some of them are like wildly expensive. Like I loved the red look that Meghan wore, I think in New York City. It was this really cool like almost like loose, like kind of not blazer, but and then she had the matching pants and she looked so cool, and I was like, where'd she get that? And then I was like, oh, $4,000 or whatever it was. I was like, that is not gonna happen at all whatsoever. So another like a little bit out of bounds thing that I'm curious about is like there's been some of the most like salacious and like crazy TikToks I've seen have been about like William cheating on Kate with this woman, Rose Hanbury, I believe her name is, and their friend group. Do you have any like, I feel like always stay above the fray and are very fair and like not salacious, but I was curious, like, do you have any like takes on that, or like, because I'm sure you've seen those TikToks too and they get to your feed as well.
Oh, yeah, and I've made a couple just kind of giving an overview of the situation. It's interesting that you say I do stay above the fray, because there are some who would strongly agree with you and say that I'm the problem. But yeah, Prince William and Kate, they had this circle of friends called the Turnip Toffs, because they were this royal aristocratic group of people who they were neighbors, meaning that their estates were just a few miles apart. And the rumor was that Kate was pregnant with their third child, Louis, and Prince William was spending a lot of time with Rose Hanbury, who was reportedly one of Kate's closest friends. So it's another one of those things. I don't think we'll ever know the truth unless somebody decides to talk or leak text messages, which probably won't happen because the royals, keep that shit on lock, really. But yeah, it's amazing how quickly that story came out. I remember that story coming out a few years ago when I was, not covering the royals online. But then how quickly it also disappeared. And there was this moment of like, wait, did I imagine that? Or did it actually happen? What's going on here? Because Prince William's lawyers squashed the story and threatened to sue for a violation of William's human rights if anybody printed it, which, that is a denial, but it's a very interesting way of going about a denial, saying that you can't even talk about this because it's so salacious and so slanderous and libelous. So yeah, when situations like that come up, I try to report, for lack of a better term, on just what's out there, the information that is out there, so that people know what to look for. They don't have to do a random Google search and not find anything. Because I do think it's important to talk about, not just issues of who's cheating on who, but, anything that the royal family does is going to be part of our history someday. They are actively writing the history books. So it does matter, as much as you might want to dismiss it as salacious gossip. It has implications.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the cover-up was really interesting, and how they wanted that story to die, and all the things that kind of came out of that. And then, of course, like there were some photos where it would be Kate and that woman Rose, who was supposedly her good friend, and maybe it was just the shot, but then it was like, ooh, that kind of looks a little icy. So there were a lot of little breadcrumbs, and then maybe it's just somebody tied them together, and it was another conspiracy theory, or maybe it has legs, but like the way in which they shut it down is really interesting. And I mean, it's not the first person they've done that with, because obviously everything that's come out about Prince Andrew, they have done everything in their power to try to shut that down. But it just got too big. I mean, the interview he gave was so atrocious. I mean, were you just like watching that and just like covering your head with a pillow?
Yeah, so like I joke that the royals need to hire me solely to follow them around with like a little spray bottle. So if something dumb, just be like, no, stop it. But it's one of those things where like in all of the possible ways you could have defended yourself, your defense is going to be that she said you sweated all over her, and that's impossible because you can't sweat because you have a medical condition. Like, it's just the choices that get made, I think, that make people raise eyebrows more than anything else. But it is also a testament to, the old royal adage of never complain, never explain. That's kind of how they used to approach these things. that doesn't work anymore. It's 2022. We demand more of our public figures and people we place in these, positions of privilege.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it was really interesting how, Prince Andrew ultimately did settle out of court with Virginia Giuffre. And, obviously it doesn't take a rocket scientist to gather that something clearly happened there that was very, very bad. And I think it's unfortunately going to be a stain on Queen Elizabeth's, reign, that this was her son and he made this horrible decision out of like entitlement and just really, really, illegal behavior. So that was crazy to see. Another one that really blows my mind, and I've done some stories on her, is Princess Michael of Kent. She looks like a true Disney villain. She looks like a Disney villain.
Yeah, you could write her as a character in like a book about a royal family, and your editor would tell you to like change it because it's too on the nose. So she's married to the Queen's cousin, Prince Michael of Kent, who, if you want a mind trip, look up Prince Michael of Kent next to Tsar Nicholas of Russia, and you will see visually how these families are still so connected because they almost look identical. Tsar Nicholas was a cousin of Queen Elizabeth's grandfather. Yes, grandfather. So anyway, so it's just another example of how stuck in the past the royal family is, because Princess Michael's backwards attitudes towards specifically Black women are on full display if you know where to look for them. It's rumored that she had a pair of black sheep that she named Venus and Serena. And then, of course, the brooch that she wore for her first meeting with Meghan Markle was what's called a blackamoor, this depiction of a Black servant from, across history. These images have been used, but today it's kind of accepted that that's not a good way of portraying people of color. So it's an example of getting with the times is not really something that can be expected of that older generation, because it's just not part of their worldview.
Absolutely. And, it was interesting too. She had that spat in the West Village, allegedly, with a group of diners. It was like a table of people who were mostly of color, or maybe it was all Black people at the table. And they were being loud, which at 9 p.m. in New York City, I lived in New York City for many years. You're having a loud dinner if you're out in the West Village at 9 p.m. having dinner. It's fine. It's not like people need to be quiet at dinner at that hour in the West Village. You're out with friends. So apparently she asked to be moved, and when she got up to move, she like briskly went over and was like go back to the colonies. And then they asked for clarification. She said, "I told you to remember the colonies." People were so polite back then.
People are so touchy.
And then there was the guy that her daughter dated who wrote that huge piece for Vanity Fair. Did you ever see that?
I actually haven't seen that.
Ooh, that's a good one. He recounts doing ecstasy and swimming in a pool naked and at Windsor Palace. It is truly like you should dive into that. I think I did a story a long time ago, but you should resurface that on your channel, because that was a crazy piece. And he actually said, because I think he was Indian maybe, or Pakistani, but he, obviously is a man of color dating this woman's daughter who's like notoriously, allegedly racist. He didn't have the most horrible things to say about her, but I think there were definitely like undertones of like, she maybe knows how to behave when she's on her good behavior or whatever. But it's just, it's really, really backwards. So like, since you have your finger on the pulse of this family, like what do you think the future is? Do you think it's going to be a downsized royal family? Do you think that like the royal family is going to cease to exist?
Gosh, I wish I knew. I think we'll have a clearer picture if and when Queen Elizabeth passes, because Prince Charles has made it clear for many years, which is kind of unprecedented for the Prince of Wales to make quote unquote political decisions known, but he's made it clear that he wants to slim down the royal family and make the core group much smaller. So we wouldn't be paying attention to the cousins, the great grandchildren to an extent. It would be solely focused on the monarch, the Prince of Wales, his son or daughter, and their children, the direct heirs. We would be cutting the fat, essentially. So that in itself is going to be a very interesting adjustment. But also things like the question of the Commonwealth that was raised this past week when Will and Kate were in the Caribbean. More and more countries, I think, are going to make the move, if not in Queen Elizabeth's lifetime, but if not then, but then after, to kind of pave their own way and become independent or become republics or remove the monarch as their head of state. So yeah, many possible routes this could take forward. I think those things will all happen before we see the question of the monarchy going away entirely. That's going to be a huge paradigm shift for the entire world because the British monarchy has been around for 1,000 years, really.
Right, and ultimately they do bring in so much money for England, you know, with the weddings and everything. I mean, were you like awake for obviously Kate's wedding, and like where were you when you watched the royal weddings? Because I know you watched them. I watched them too.
Oh yeah, I definitely watched Will and Kate's with my mom. I think she had DVR'd it, and probably watched it in her bedroom. But it's funny because with Harry and Meghan's wedding, obviously we watched that one too. But I was in the UK for unrelated things that summer after their wedding, and everyone was still in like a party mood. It was just such a huge draw for tourism. So, you know, I'm sympathetic to that argument of like, if we get rid of the royal family, then this income stream will dry up. But also, people don't go to visit places like Kensington Palace or Windsor Castle just because the royals live there. There's also a lot of history still in these places, and a lot of the palaces and castles are cared for by charities who run them as museums. So I when people sound that alarm bell of, you know, we can't get rid of them because of all the revenue that they drive, you know, you got to also think about, well, there's also ways you can incorporate that history and still get some of that income with them necessarily being, you know, present. So lots of paths forward.
Absolutely, because I mean, we obviously all visit other European and otherwise nations, like, and go see where the royals used to live when they had feudal systems, like back hundreds of years ago. So I agree with you completely. I think it'll be a really interesting path forward. I think, you know, the wheels seem to be, you know, coming off of the family a little bit, but I could see it being more pared down, you know, and it's kind of amazing to see these countries that are involved in the Commonwealth stand up for themselves. I applaud them, and I thought the way things went down in Jamaica and the way that they, you know, had that conversation with William and Kate present for the first time was just like absolutely incredible. But I will be watching closely for sure. Well, I mean, in April we're going to get a do-over pretty much of the Caribbean tour. The Earl and Countess of Wessex are going on their own visit to a couple of different Caribbean nations, which whoever planned that might be getting fired. But we'll see if the energy is the same in these other, I think they're stopping in 4 places because, you know, Prince Edward and Sophie, his wife, they're a little bit more low key than Will and Kate. There's not going to be the same amount of fervor for them, but they're still senior royals. It's the Queen's son. So I'll be very interested. I think that'll be our next indication of whether this was a blip in time or if it's something that is here to stay. Absolutely, and also just to see if they heard any of the feedback. Like, honestly, they should just all go onto like Matter of Fact on TikTok, and they will learn everything they need to know. That can be their spray bottle.
Sometimes. Yeah, I wonder sometimes if someone in the office follows me on a burner account, just to, you know, not because my opinion matters, but because I'm the voice of the onlooker, of the outsider, and you can go into my comment section and kind of get a finger on the pulse very quickly. I wonder that sometimes. I do. I don't think Will and Kate or Meghan and Harry, you know, have seen my videos, but I would not be surprised if some intern of theirs has.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a part of their job, and I've definitely the algorithm on TikTok is so strange because it ends up finding people who are related to stories. That's what I've realized through my time on TikTok. It seems like my phone is like listening to me. I'm sure after this discussion, I'm getting even more royal content, which I welcome because I love the royal content. For William and Kate's wedding, I was in college, and I woke up at 5 a.m. because I lived in Colorado at the time to watch it. And like a psycho, I ordered like Jimmy John's and like was just like eating a sandwich, like, you know, watching this wedding, like, you know, just loving every minute of it. And then for Meghan and Harry's, I was actually in India and I had to go to find Wi-Fi. And I like was, you know, moving the phone around to get the right Wi-Fi, you know, signal to get the footage of Harry and Meghan, and they were just both such
You're like
different
trying to
weddings.
see the dress, and gosh.
Oh my God! Well, the dresses are always such a draw, you know. And I think I love all the royal fashion. I love following you. So you're doing merch now, which I love. So tell us a little bit about the RoyalTEA merch.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I have a friend who works with Bonfire, and she was watching, as many people were, the invasion of some trolls onto my platform, and she was saying, you know, this is a good time if you ever wanted to make merch, you should do it because you have a lot of supporters who I'm sure would be happy to wear, you know. I have a t-shirt with a tiara on it. There's a mug that says RoyalTEA, TEA, which I think is so clever. But yeah, the first round just went out. I'm waiting eagerly on a couple items myself that I purchased with my own money because why not? But yeah, I also welcome ideas. So Yankee Wally, the lovely woman from Wales who made a video or mentioned me in one of her videos saying, I think I'm all that in a bag of chips. She earned a spot in my merch. So I'm waiting on my sweatshirt to proudly proclaim that, yes, I think I am all that in a bag of chips.
You are, though. And didn't Yankee Wally kind of link up with Samantha Markle a little bit?
Yeah. So without going too much into it, because it really is a downward spiral if you get too leads on this. Samantha Markle, Meghan's half-sister, they have the same father. She... I don't even know how to phrase this. She linked up with a few of Meghan's dedicated trolls on Twitter originally. They would concoct conspiracy theories about her in the DMs and then make fake accounts, spread these theories to other people to get them to spread it farther, really for the sole purpose of trying to bring her down and destabilize her position within the family. And it makes you wonder where our discourse would be if they had not been active players in that, because that's, I think, where it got so normalized that it was okay to talk about her this way. But, you know, since then, Samantha Markle has been deplatformed. Her Twitter suspended recently, but she's also suing Meghan Markle for defamation in the ultimate twist of fate, because something Meghan said in either the interview or in a subsequent interview, Samantha claims is factually inaccurate. And you just have to laugh, right? Because this is the kind of thing that happens when people get so caught up in this space. It's, like we said, it's very intense.
I truly, it's one of those things where I just feel so bad for Meghan, because I think about it and it's like, okay, if any normal person were to step forward and marry somebody like Prince Harry and get all this media attention and then have all this media that is so happy to pay and also like work with family members who are disgruntled and want to talk badly about someone, I think any one of us would have some weird person from middle school that hated us, or some like
an ex-boyfriend, something.
Everyone. And Meghan, poor Meghan, her family can't keep it together, and it's just like even her dad with the interviews. It's been so sad to see because, you know.
They even pin that on her, like, oh well, why didn't Meghan have any of her family at her wedding? It's like, because they've made it clear that they're trying to profit off of her in these negative ways. It's like not her fault. I don't understand that logic at all. But yeah, I do feel for her. And I think that's part of why we haven't seen her in public very much in the past year. She's taking time to clear her head, to heal, because that has to be traumatizing to have all of this play out on the world stage, you know, she spoke openly about her mental health, about suffering a miscarriage while all of this was unfolding. So yeah, I feel for her.
I do too, and I think it's just there's so much like hatred towards Americans, hatred towards people of color, like all these different things at play.
Yeah,
it's terrible. You know, I think as a white woman talking about it, like people like hate on me just for being American, and I'm like, all right, there's another layer for her. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, you can see sometimes you can see it happening where they go down the checklist, and if I say that this being said about Meghan is rooted in racism, they say, oh, well, I don't hate her because she's Black. I hate her because she's American. It's like, okay, so you're xenophobic as well, right? What? Or I don't hate her because she's Black and American. I hate her because she's not as classy as Kate. That's another one that gets used. That's, again, it's really just a dog whistle. Anything that gets thrown her way, you can usually trace it back to one of those, like you said, isms. So very fascinating.
They tell on themselves, and they really think they're doing something sometimes. Okay, so the last thing I have to ask you this, because I just remembered that you pointed this out because you're so brilliant, and you catch all the little Easter eggs. It's like how Taylor Swift has Easter eggs, the royal family has Easter eggs, and like you're just collecting them, and you're just tying together the actual factual or potentially factual things. So you have you've made it I think it was like a video or something where in multiple interviews or in multiple public appearances, Kate and William start mentioning a baby or Kate being brutish. And you were like, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a baby soon. Do you think they're just testing the waters, or like, what's that about?
I really do think they were testing public opinion. So yeah, it was 3 different occasions since the beginning of 2021 where it either mentioned that she wanted another baby and William didn't, or William saw a baby on an engagement and said, oh, don't give my wife any ideas. So, you know, one of 2 things could be happening here. They could be soft launching a 4th baby, which now's the time. Kate did just turn 40. And for her, I'm sure having 3 children, you know, you look at your last kid, I've been told, I don't have any, but you look at your last child and having that feeling that this is your last is sometimes hard to come to grips with. Or it could not be that at all. And they were told, you know, use this talking point as a way of distracting from all of these other stories happening in the press. This was while the Prince Andrew settlement was a developing story, while the Queen's health was up in the air. So Will and Kate being used as a distraction and as a mouthpiece is always something that I find fascinating to hone in on, because they are not even a secret weapon. They're just like the most useful tool in the royal family's arsenal. They recently were named the 2nd most popular royals after the Queen in a poll. So, you know, that counts for something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also interesting always for me to see the favorability of people and how it changes over time, like with Meghan just being like, I think probably at the bottom of the barrel with people, and Harry moving down in rank. And, you know, it really
also depends on who you ask too, I think.
Yeah.
It depends on where you're getting your information, because Meghan, I think, is the most searched royal on Google for, you know, for better or for worse. So, and whenever Meghan wears an outfit, there's also the Meghan effect, you know, so it just depends on whose opinion you value, whether you think, you know, us Yanks have an opinion and should have input or not. But yeah, always interesting to see who's getting prioritized and put forward in the narrative.
It's so crazy. I always try to remind them when they, you know, they tell me I'm American and I shouldn't speak about it. I do have a dual citizenship with Ireland, so I think.
Yeah, there you go.
And your mother, you know, ingrained it in you from a young age, and you're a historian. So it's just so funny. It's such a funny topic, and you are just such a delight and just so smart. And I love watching your TikToks. So tell everyone where to find you and how they can support you and all that good stuff.
Sure. So yeah, I am on TikTok, obviously, at Matta, MATTA _of_fact. Same handle for Instagram and on Twitter. If you are on Twitter, I don't recommend getting on if you're not, but on Twitter, just remove the underscores. I do also have a podcast, which is completely separate from my royal commentary, although we do talk about royal history sometimes. That is called Art of History. It's on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the big ones. Currently in the middle of a little bit of a hiatus, getting some research done for the next quote unquote season. But that's really fun. I've really enjoyed using my platform to kind of incorporate some of my other interests. I do have a degree in art history, so that's been great. But beyond that, if you want to support me, you can find me on Patreon and on Bonfire if you're interested in picking up some of the merch.
I mean, I think I need the all that and the bag of chips shirt because that, I don't know how that's not a viral sound. Amanda, thank you so much for all that you do on TikTok and for being here today and just for diving into the royals with me because it's one of my favorite topics and you are my royal expert 100% and I just appreciate you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And as always, this is all my opinion, all alleged. Please don't sue me, Prince William. But yes, it's great to spill some of the royal tea, definitely.
Gotta love it. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, that is our show for today. Amanda is literally like a royal genius. And if you don't follow her on TikTok, head over there because everything I know and everything I've learned in the past, like I could say year, comes from her page. She goes in depth. She's one of the smartest people I know. And the way that she presents information, just having an education background, having that art history background, is just so intelligent. And she, is always fair and really is not divisive. And a lot of the media you will see around the royals is so polarized. So I highly recommend her. And, if you're British and you're listening, you got to let us Americans talk about the royals a little bit. Come on. You can't keep them all for yourself. Anyway, you guys, thank you so much for listening in, and I will see you next week.